Over the past few weeks we have been voting for what our favourite Mass Effect 3 multiplayer character was. Now that the votes have been counted, I can reveal the top 10 multiplayer characters as voted by us as a community as we count down to Mass Effect Andromeda's release. So let's take a look at the character who made the number 8 slot, the Krogan Battlemaster Vanguard. Introduced in the DLC Resurgence pack, he is a beacon of toughness, able to take a lot of damage whilst at the same time restoring his barriers, or shields, and even regenerate his own health. With a decent weapon at his side, the Krogan Battlemaster was an easy candidate to take on the harder difficulties in the game. Now, like with all Vanguards, he came with Biotic Charge, a wonderful biotic ability that allows a player character to charge headlong into foes, knocking them back whilst at the same time, if spec'd right, restoring their barriers, or shields. I should say shields, but I mean barriers. Biotic characters, they don't really have shields at all, they have biotic barriers, which in terms of game mechanics are their version of shields. It just gets a bit confusing because the Krogan Battlemaster also has an ability called Barrier, so he has Barrier in terms of his shields and then Barrier in terms of his ability. Anyway, Biotic Charge, as well as it being fairly hard hitting, it could also detonate combos, so it could work well with teammates who had priming abilities. The Battlemaster also came with Carnage, which allowed the Battlemaster to fire a vicious blast at enemies. It was effective against armor, although with the Krogan Battlemaster, I always felt it subpar to take this ability. The best thing about Carnage, in my opinion, was the fact that it could set up fire explosions, or even detonate tech combos. Carnage was maybe worth taking if you didn't have any high level weapons. The Krogan Battlemaster also came with Barrier. This wonderful tool kept him alive in the worst circumstances. It provided him with damage reduction, which, if spec'd in a certain way, could allow the Krogan Battlemaster to take a lot of punishment before his barriers depleted. It also, if spec'd right, could boost either the recharge rate of his standard shields or barriers, or increase the damage and force of his other abilities. You could detonate the barrier if you wanted to deal damage to enemies around you, similar to how tech armor works, but I really never felt the need to. Sacrificing that damage reduction was a risky move, even if it gave you a short burst of damage. The only downside about Barrier and Tech Armor when I look back at it is that when you have it active, your power recharge rate is slowed down, which is a little bit of a shame, but with the Krogan Battlemaster it didn't really cause too much of a problem, especially if you weren't using Carnage. Normally your barrier and barrier shields would not be depleted by the time your biotic charge came off cooldown, allowing you to charge into an enemy and thus instantly restoring your shields to maximum once again. You could rinse and repeat this rotation, allowing the Battlemaster to take a lot of punishment. As for the passive for the Krogan Battlemaster, again these were similar to what you would find on other Krogans. So firstly you had the passives to increase your weapon damage or power damage. Normally with the Krogan Battlemaster I would do weapon damage, as I would normally rely on the weapon to deal damage rather than his abilities, as the abilities are mainly used for his survivability. And then going back to his rage mode, this was available for all Krogan. A nice survivability tool and a damage boosting tool, thanks to the fact that once you get 3 melee kills you could go into a rage mode, increasing your melee damage and also giving you another source of damage reduction. The way I played this character was to rely on your weapon for damage. Personally, the Riga Carbine was easy mode when used on this character. You could take on the harder difficulties easily, even going as far as to solo platinum. If you don't have the Riga Carbine, other shotguns seem to work well because you will be in fairly close range to opponents. One thing I would do with my weaponry as well is to take some sort of elemental ammo, either incendiary ammo or cryo ammo. That way you could shoot a target with your shotgun or Riga Carbine or whatever, and then follow it up with biotic charge when your barriers go to activate that cryo explosion or fire explosion. This was a nice extra source of damage. As I already mentioned, his biotic charge combined with barrier, combined with his passives, and the fact that he's a Krogan and comes with 1000 health and shields, makes him a tough wall for the enemies to break down. You just have to be wary of insta-kill foes, because like with all Krogans, although they're always better at close range, they are susceptible to these annoying foes. Whilst getting his rage mode does benefit him overall, it is hard to get, especially on the harder difficulties. I keep saying harder difficulties, but it's not easy to just go around meleeing brutes and banshees and such. Instead, when the opportunity presents itself, try to melee the weak foes like husks and that. I mean, overall I can see why this guy is on the top 10 list. He was one of the tankiest characters in the game, probably the tankiest out of the Krogan characters. You just have to be wary of your biotic charge not to get you into trouble. As always, a disclaimer, this top 10 list is a popularity contest, so to speak, and all the votes have been made by us as a community. These are not necessarily the best characters to take on the harder difficulties in the game. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check back for the number 7 slot, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you the number 8 slot in our Mass Effect 3 multiplayer top 10 series. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.